AITA for preemptively striking against splitting the bill at a group dinner. So, a little context. I'm part of this friend group that meets up for dinner every now and then. We're talking once or twice a month, sometimes more if there's an occasion. In this group, we've got 5 solos, including myself, and 2 couples who, well, let's just say they have a reputation. For as long as I've known them, these 2 couples have this thing about splitting the check evenly no matter what, and they always seem to treat group dinners as their chance to have a meal on someone else's dime. You know the type, ordering appetizers like they're free samples, cocktails like they're the only ones thirsty, and always opting. Now, I usually avoid these dinners. I just can't deal with the whole split it evenly routine when I'm sitting there eating a reasonably priced pasta dish and drinking a Coke, while they're downing steak, shrimp, fancy desserts, and cocktails. It's frustrating, and quite frankly, I work hard for my money, and I don't like throwing it away to subsidize someone else's lavish night out. So, for a while, I've been the guy that politely declines these group invites. No harm, no foul. But, recently, I got invited again, and the message that caught my attention was, "Oh, and the freeloaders aren't coming this time." Yes, they're called the freeloaders by everyone behind their backs, but nobody has the guts to say it to their faces. Seeing that they wouldn't be there, I thought, hey, this could be a nice time to catch up with everyone, so I agreed. I wanted to enjoy a chill dinner, and it felt like a safe bet since the usual drama wasn't going to be there. It's been a while since I've hung out with everyone, and I was honestly looking forward to it. So I got dressed up, grabbed my keys, and headed to the restaurant. I showed up at the place, a pretty nice restaurant downtown. As I walked in, I was all smiles, thinking, finally, no stress, no splitting the check nonsense. I said my hellos and took my seat. And that's when it happened. I heard this laugh, and I swear, my heart dropped. I turned around, and there they were, the freeloading couple sitting at the table. I had to do a double take because I was honestly stunned. I could feel that sinking feeling in my stomach. You know that feeling when you just know something's gonna go sideways? Yeah, that. I didn't even bother asking anyone what they were doing there or why I'd been misled about their attendance. Maybe it was a last-minute change, maybe not, it didn't matter. All I knew was that if I stuck around and did things the way we always do, I was gonna be footing a solid portion of the bill for their gourmet experience. So I put my game face on, took a deep breath, and decided I was not letting them take me for a ride this time. The night started off pretty standard. We all ordered, chatted, and caught up on life. I ordered a pasta dish, something mid-priced, and a Coke, nothing crazy. Meanwhile, the freeloaders were in full swing, ordering appetizers for the table, which, surprise surprise, they were the only ones really eating. It felt like watching a car crash in slow motion, but I kept my cool. I smiled, nodded, and participated in the conversation. Then the drinks started flowing, for them at least, cocktails, bottles of wine, you name it. All while I sat there with my Coke, taking small sips, just trying to stay calm and not let it get to me. As dinner wrapped up, I knew it was go time. I excused myself from the table, saying I needed to use the restroom. Instead, I found our server. He was a young guy, looked like he might have been in his early 20s. I walked up to him and said, "Hey, I was wondering if you could do me a favor. Would you mind separating my bill from the rest of the group?" He nodded, smiled, and said, "Of course, no problem at all." I thanked him, feeling an instant sense of relief. At least someone understood. I went back to the table, and soon enough, the server came around with the check. He handed me my separate bill, and I pulled out my card and handed it over to him immediately. As he walked away, I could see the freeloaders exchange a look, like something was off. When he came back with my receipt, I signed it, left a solid 25% tip because the guy deserved it, and that's when the freeloaders finally spoke up. One of them, let's call him Bob, looked at me with a confused expression and said, "Oh, I thought we were splitting it like we always do." I gave him a polite smile and said, "Oh, well, you're bad." And that's when the atmosphere changed. You could feel the tension at the table, like everyone was holding their breath. After my little comment, 2 of the other solos looked at each other and then at the server and said, "Actually, can we get separate checks too?" The server nodded, no complaints at all, and started working it out. I could see the freeloaders were getting increasingly agitated, whispering among themselves, looking at their phones, probably doing some mental math to figure out how much more they were gonna have to pay now that their usual victims had opted out. Once my bill was settled, I stood up, smiled at everyone, and said, "All right, folks, it's been fun. I'm gonna head out, good night." A few of them smiled back, a bit awkwardly, and said their goodbyes. The freeloaders barely looked at me, which I took as a badge of honor at that point. I walked out of there feeling light, like I'd finally stood up for myself against this ridiculous tradition. But, of course, it didn't end there. The next morning, I woke up to a text from one of the other people in the group. It wasn't one of the solos who had asked for a separate bill. It was someone who had kept quiet during the entire thing. Let's call her Megan. Megan basically sent me this long message about how my actions had disrupted the group vibe and how I was being in awe for making a scene. She said the freeloaders felt awkward and blindsided because we always split the bill evenly and that the whole point of these dinners was for everyone to enjoy themselves without worrying about costs. She even added that splitting it evenly helps with the 20% group gratuity, which, honestly, felt like such a reach. I was stunned. I mean, was I supposed to just keep letting them take advantage of me? I texted her back, saying I wasn't going to be guilted into spending beyond my means, especially when it was clear that the freeloaders were exploiting this setup. I also reminded her that the only reason I'd come in the first place was because I'd been told that these freeloaders wouldn't be there. I told her they've been pulling this crap for years, and I was tired of it. Megan responded with some passive-aggressive comment about how I should have just played along for the sake of the group and that my actions made others reconsider how they were paying too, which caused confusion and disrupted the dinner. I couldn't believe what I was reading. It wasn't like I stood up on my chair and shouted, "Separate checks for everyone." I literally just quietly handled my own bill and left. And here's the kicker. I found out later that two of the solos who asked for separate bills had actually texted each other afterward, saying they were glad I did what I did because they'd felt the same way for a long time, but didn't want to be the first to rock the boat. So, if anything, I feel like I finally gave people the push they needed to stand up to this freeloading nonsense. But now, I'm getting the cold shoulder from some people in the group, and there's this weird tension hanging over everything. It feels like I broke some unspoken rule, and I'm left wondering if I should have just sucked it up and dealt with the unfair split, or if I did the right thing by setting a boundary. Update. So, I've got an update for everyone. Honestly, I'm feeling a mix of emotions about everything that's unfolded since that dinner. First off, I want to say thank you to everyone who weighed in on my situation. I took a lot of your comments to heart, and it turns out, you all were more right than I could have ever imagined. After that weird text from Megan calling me out for disrupting the group vibe, I decided I wasn't just going to stew in this drama alone. I forwarded her text to the two people, who also asked for separate bills. Let's call them Dan and Rachel. I wanted to get their take on it because it really seemed like everyone was getting dragged into this nonsense, and I wasn't going to let my actions be misrepresented. Anyway, I texted them both, and, wow, their reactions were unexpected. Both Dan and Rachel were actually pissed off about the message Megan had sent me. Dan responded first, and I could tell he was typing like a madman because I got like 4 separate messages within a minute of each other. He was really blunt about it. "That's total BS. You're definitely not the I'm glad you did what you did." He went on to say that he was getting tired of the moochers and had been dreading these dinners for months. He said that, honestly, he'd wished he had stood up for himself sooner, but he always found himself going along to avoid rocking the boat. Then Rachel chimed in with her take, and it really surprised me. She said something that really put things into perspective for me. She said, "The group vibe was disrupted the first time you stopped coming." I was taken aback for a second and asked her to elaborate. Rachel explained that everyone knew why I stopped showing up, even if it wasn't explicitly talked about. It made the freeloading this massive elephant in the room. She said she could see the guilt on people's faces sometimes, especially the other solos, who were also tired of the splitting routine. But nobody wanted to bring it up, so they just let it fester and avoided confronting the issue. She admitted she was too passive to be the first one to do anything about it, but that when I left, it put a strain on everyone because, well, There was this unspoken awareness that things weren't fair. She ended her text by saying she and Dan missed having me at these dinners, and that it was nice to have someone who finally called out the unfairness, even if I didn't do it in a dramatic way. Honestly, that part really got me. I had no idea my absence had actually made that kind of impact. To hear them both say they missed me made me feel a lot better about everything. I wasn't just being selfish by not wanting to subsidize someone else's fancy meals. I was setting a boundary that needed to be set, and apparently, it had given other people the courage to start questioning things too. So, after we had this conversation, the three of us, me, Dan, and Rachel, decided we needed to reach out to Megan. Megan, by the way, is the person who usually organizes these dinners, so she's kind of the glue of the group in that way. We wanted to talk to her directly and try to figure out where her head was at, especially since she seemed to be the most upset about the disruption. When we got Megan on a call, she sounded a bit nervous at first, which made me think she knew we wanted to talk about more than just her text. I started off by apologizing if I made her feel uncomfortable at the dinner, but also told her that I needed to set my boundaries. I told her I didn't think it was fair for me to keep subsidizing these extravagant meals just because a couple of people decided they were entitled to order the most expensive items every single time. And then Megan said something I didn't expect. She apologized to me. She said, "I'm really sorry, I should have communicated better." She went on to explain that, actually, the freeloading couples had decided last minute that they were going to come to the dinner after all. She knew about it with plenty of time to let me know, but didn't because she really wanted me to be there. She admitted that when she saw my face after I walked in and saw them, she immediately knew she'd made the wrong call. She could tell I was frustrated, but she just didn't know how to handle the situation. Megan then confessed that she was tired of the freeloaders too, but was too much of a coward, her words, to say something to them directly. And because she didn't say anything, it only fueled their confidence to keep saying, "Well, this is just how we always do it." Megan said didn't like it her to see me frustrated and know that she'd put me in that position, especially because she didn't even enjoy having them there. She just didn't want to be the bad guy. She then filled us in on what happened after we left. This part, I have to admit, was pretty satisfying to hear. After I left, and then shortly after that Dan and Rachel both left too, Megan said the tension at the table was very high. Apparently, once the server came back around, the remaining solos who hadn't initially asked for separate checks decided to go ahead and get separate bills as well. This didn't sit well with the freeloading couples, and they didn't even try to hide their frustration. Megan said they started grumbling about how this wasn't how we usually do it and how splitting the bill evenly was just easier for everyone. But that's not even the best part. The freeloaders actually tried to justify their behavior. They went on this spiel about how they have more expenses than the rest of us and that we should be willing to help them have a little joy in their lives by splitting things evenly. Can you believe that? Megan said they were acting like we were all being heartless for not wanting to pay for their luxurious dinner habits. One of them even said, "Wouldn't it be hard for you to help us from time to time?" Megan told us she wanted to snap back. It's been way more than once in a while, but she held her tongue. Still, you could tell she was over it, and the rest of the group had had enough too. Anyway, the freeloaders were clearly fuming by the end of it, and the vibe at the table was completely off. Megan said the rest of the night was super awkward, and it ended with everyone kind of rushing out after paying their individual bills. The freeloaders were visibly unhappy, and they barely said goodbye to anyone. After hearing all of this, the four of us, me, Dan, Rachel, and Megan, had a real heart-to-heart. We talked about how we wanted to handle things moving forward. None of us wanted to keep dealing with the freeloaders, and we definitely didn't want to go back to the split the bill evenly nonsense, especially now that everyone had seen how much better it felt to just pay for what you ordered and be done with it. So, we decided we're going to start something new. We're starting our own little group dinner tradition, just the four of us for now, at a different restaurant. We're going to choose a place where we can all feel comfortable ordering whatever we want without worrying about someone taking advantage of the situation. Megan even said she was excited to plan it, and this time, we all agreed that separate checks would be the standard going forward. No more tiptoeing around the freeloaders, No more pretending that everything is fine when it's not. Just good food, good company, and everyone paying their fair share. Megan also mentioned that if anyone else from the original group wanted to join, they'd be welcome as long as they understood the new arrangement. We're not excluding anyone, but we're also not going to be taken advantage of anymore. And if the freeloaders want to come, they'll be informed upfront that it's separate checks only, no exceptions. I have a feeling that might be enough to keep them away, but honestly, I don't care either way. This whole situation has been a wild ride, but it feels like we finally turned a corner. I'm really looking forward to our next dinner, one where I can actually enjoy myself without worrying about subsidizing someone else's lifestyle. And it feels amazing to know that I'm not alone in feeling this way, that other people were tired of it too but just needed a push to stand up for themselves. So, that's where things are at now. I've learned a lot through this experience, not just about setting boundaries, but also about how sometimes you've got to be the one to make a move if you want things to change. I'm really grateful to Dan, Rachel, and Megan for standing by me, and I'm hopeful that our new group dinners are going to be even better than before. It's funny how something as simple as paying for your own meal can end up making such a big difference, but here we are. And to those freeloaders, maybe it's time to learn how to budget. Update. So, I didn't expect to have another update so soon, but what happened at our first new group dinner was too wild not to share. If you are one of the people invested in the freeloaders' antics, you're going to want to hear this. We decided to put our plan into action and set up our first new dinner. It was me, Dan, Rachel, and Megan, and we picked a restaurant none of us had been to before, a nice little Italian place across town. We figured a fresh start deserved a fresh venue, plus the food looked amazing online, and the reviews were solid. None of us knew what to expect, but we all agreed we were ready for a drama-free night where we could actually enjoy ourselves. So, the day of the dinner rolls around, and we're all excited. We meet at the restaurant, and the vibe is instantly great. Megan has this big smile on her face, and Rachel's cracking jokes before we even get inside. We get seated at a cozy table in the back corner, and it feels perfect, like a nice, quiet spot where we can just chill and catch up. We order our drinks, and the waiter is super nice. He's got this cheerful energy that just makes everything feel even more relaxed. When we get to ordering our food, I notice there's this buzz of conversation and laughter in the air, and I'm feeling optimistic about the night. For the first time in a while, I don't have that nagging anxiety about the bill, or about who's going to order what and how much it's all going to cost me. We each pick exactly what we want, no judgment, no worries about splitting things evenly, just the freedom to get what we actually feel like eating. We settle in, and our food comes out. I ordered a carbonara, and let me tell you, it was amazing. Creamy, rich, perfectly seasoned. We're all diving into our meals and just enjoying each other's company, and it feels good, like we found our little groove again. We're talking, laughing, and sharing stories when suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I see something that makes me pause. It takes me a second to register what I'm seeing, but then I lean in to whisper to Megan, "Hey, isn't that?" And she follows my gaze. There, not too far away, sitting at a table on the other side of the restaurant, are none other than the freeloaders, both couples, all four of them. Megan's eyes widen, and she gives me this look like, "You've got to be kidding me." I nudge Dan and Rachel too, and pretty soon, we're all glancing over, trying to be subtle, but also kind of amazed by this coincidence. The freeloaders are sitting there, at a table with another group of people, none of whom we recognize, and they seem to be having a pretty lively conversation. Now, I know some people might say that this is just a coincidence and that maybe they just wanted to try out the new restaurant too, but honestly, it was just too funny. Here we were, trying to escape the freeloading drama, and boom, there they are, almost like the universe was playing some sort of cosmic joke on us. We tried not to stare, and we got back to our own conversation, but I could tell we were all keeping an ear open to the freeloaders' table. At first, it seemed like they were having a good time. There was a lot of laughter, a lot of loud talking, and they were ordering quite a bit of food, appetizers, drinks, the works. It honestly made me wonder if they'd pulled the same trick on this new group that they had on us. Anyway, we continued with our meal, But it wasn't long before the energy at the freeloaders table started to change. It started with one of the freeloading couples, the husband and wife, kind of muttering something that sounded tense. The woman from the other group, who looked like she might have been the one organizing their dinner, seemed to get this confused expression, like she didn't understand what was going on. Then came the familiar tone, low, annoyed, and unmistakable. Well, this is how we always do it. I think my ears perked up like a dog who just heard the treat bag rustle. Megan, who had been in the middle of telling us a story about her dog eating her favorite shoes, stopped talking and gave me a look like, "Are you hearing this too?" The volume at the freeloaders table started getting louder. The couple who'd tried to freeload off us last time were now clearly arguing with their new group. I heard bits and pieces stuff about expenses and just easier to split it evenly, and I could feel Dan beside me trying not to laugh. The other group seemed confused, but also not willing to back down. I heard someone say, "But I only ordered a salad and water," which was pretty much déjà vu from what we'd experienced with them before. At this point, I think we all kind of stopped pretending we weren't eavesdropping. I could see Megan biting her lip, trying not to burst out laughing, and Rachel had her hand covering her mouth, her shoulders shaking slightly. The freeloaders were getting increasingly agitated, while the other group seemed to be standing their ground. It was like watching a replay of what had happened with us, but this time from a safe distance, and it was honestly a little validating. It escalated for a bit, and then, all of a sudden, it seemed like things just imploded. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught enough to know that the other group was done with the freeloaders' nonsense. They ended up getting separate checks after all, and you could see the irritation written all over the freeloaders' faces. They were definitely not happy about it. The rest of the group paid their bills, each individually, and left without saying much more. They clearly didn't want anything to do with the freeloaders after that argument. So there the freeloaders were, left sitting alone at the table, looking super annoyed and awkward. You could tell they were trying to save face, but honestly, it was pretty satisfying to watch them deal with the fallout of their own entitlement. Eventually, they called the waiter over and, grudgingly, paid their own bill. They left shortly after, still looking sour. The entire time, we just sat there, trying not to make eye contact with them so we wouldn't get pulled into their drama, but it was so hard not to laugh. Once they were gone, Megan let out this massive breath she'd apparently been holding and whispered, "Did that seriously just happen?" We all just lost it. Dan was the first to start laughing, and it quickly spread to the rest of us. I couldn't help it, there was just something about seeing these freeloaders try to pull the same trick on a completely different group, and then watching it backfire on them, that felt incredibly vindicating. It was like karma had decided to make an appearance, right there in the middle of the Italian restaurant. When our waiter came back, we were all still giggling, and we asked for our checks, separate checks, of course. The waiter, who'd probably heard some of the freeloaders' commotion, smiled knowingly and didn't even bat an eye. We each paid for our meals, no drama, no tension, no freeloading couples trying to guilt us into paying for their extravagance, and it felt so good. Just for friends having a nice dinner, enjoying each other's company, and paying their own way. Honestly, it was the best dinner we'd had in a long time. So, Reddit, AITA for finally refusing to split the bill evenly with the freeloaders and getting my own separate check.